Good evening and welcome to tonight's Hearthstone Half Hour. I'm Hammy, this is FailCraft Casts. Hope you're well this Monday night. It's really great to be back. Had a week off last week. Hope you guys have not gone away. We are going to be jumping straight back into New Player Monday. Had a really busy week last week. As a quick summary, going to be going to E3, massively excited about that, but you can have a look at that on the blog and we'll talk about it later. You guys want some Hearthstone, we're going to be jumping straight in. Now, it's halfway through Season 2 at this point in time, ranked Season 2, but one thing that did show up, and it's a good new player, or if you're new to Hearthstone or an intermediate card player concept, is taking a look at the metagame, the different kinds of decks that are out there. In the metagame, you will get decks that are popular, they will fall away, they will come back, and there'll be a whole mixture of things going on. So it is good to take a look and know your enemy, which is where this series came from. So we played against a bunch of Miracle Rogues at some point or another last season, and we've always wanted to get underneath the skin of it to see how it's doing. So without further ado, let us jump into the concept of Miracle decks. We're going to be using the Miracle Rogue because that was quite common last season as our example this time round. So going back to the first concept of know our enemy, what we did in this series was to take decks that we played a lot against, we saw turn up a lot on the ladder, try and break them down, maybe take a deck list, see how they play, and then having built our own version of Decklist, explaining the cards as much as we can as we go, then take them into a few casual games to test them out and see how the run through worked. So that is the concept of this series. Firstly, we're going to take Miracle Rogue. So let us jump straight into the Miracle Rogue. We've got a list, I believe it's from Calento from last season. Certainly, if you looked at the top 16 of the US Hearthstone ladder, there were a good, I'd say at least 12 Miracle Rogue decks. There are different variations, but let's go straight back to the beginning and go, what is Miracle? Well, Miracle at the moment, forgive me if I'm wrong, is kind of based off a couple of things. One is this card here, the Gadget Zan Auctioneer. So if we have a look at the Gadget Zan Auctioneer, this is where Miracle sort of kind of comes off with to start. It is the concept of drawing a whole bunch of cards in a hurry using this card. We can see Gadget Zan Auctioneer, though he's out turn 5 unless you've got a coin. Whenever you cast a spell, you draw a card. So how does Gadget Zan Auctioneer thrive? He thrives off a lot of cheap spells that you can throw out in one go. Used to run the black market auction house, but there was just too much violence. A nice little World of Warcraft nod there to the neutral black market auction house where Alliance and Horde could both go and shop. But here is one of the cornerstones of Miracle, the Gadget Zan Auctioneer. You just get this guy down as soon as possible, and you then throw a bunch of cheap spells that you've got in your hand. Hopefully these spells are giving you beneficial effects, they're clearing the table, they're buffing up your minions, whatever they are doing, but as well as getting you a massive hopeful advantage on the table by throwing down those cheap spells, you're also drawing more cards. If those more cards are cheap spells, you play those, you draw more cards, you play those, you draw more cards. This is deck acceleration, this is deck cycling, this is card draw, however you want to call this concept at its core. The Gadget Zan Auctioneer lets you ruffle through your deck if you've got a lot of cheap spells you can throw. So obviously you need some goal to those cheap spells, they need to be doing something for you, there's no point in just playing cheap spells to draw more cards, but this card should help you get ahead whatever your goal is and stay there. So in terms of a Miracle deck, you will see the Gadget Zan Auctioneer probably in a lot of them. Hello to people in the chat, it is great to see you back. Thank you for your patience. So we have the Gadget Zan Auctioneer as a cornerstone of Miracle. Drawing cards, getting benefits, using those benefits to draw more cards. So there is a part of the Gadget Zan Auctioneer. So you will see Miracle decks. I've seen Miracle Druids turning up, and indeed in a future New Player Monday or Deck Garage session like we do on Mondays. I really want to get to know our enemy and get behind the Miracle Druid. But that also, even though it's a Druid, and we're going to be going through Rogue today, even though it is a Druid deck, it still has this core at its heart. Get the Gadget Zan Auctioneer down, start throwing out cheap spells, and keeping things going. So, next piece, aside that Miracle bit, we've got a Gadget Zan Auctioneer, but what else makes a Miracle deck? Well, the other thing that kind of makes a Miracle deck is some kind of really solid attacking combo. There's something that you're trying to do, and in previous episodes we have gone through having a game plan to your deck, having a combo and a plan that you're trying to get away. So, in this deck, the Miracle Rogue, it was, and because about at least 10 to 12 of the US ladder were Miracle Rogues at the end of Ranked Season 1, so I feel this is a good starting example. The Miracle Rogue combo, it's got some kind of combo and finisher. Now, in the Miracle Rogue, you can have two different kinds of version. Now, we're looking at the Leroy Jenkins version, but there's also a Malagos version as well. So we'll have a quick look at Leroy. So what does Leroy do? You probably know Leroy in Hunter decks, charging Hunter decks. In other decks, he is a finisher. You can see that he charges battle cries. He summons 2 whelps who can kill him, but hopefully by the time you're dropping Leroy, your opponent has no response. So how does Leroy fit into a combo of Miracle? He is our finisher in this deck. I'll tell you that for free, but how does he fit into the Miracle combo? Well, the Gadgets and Auctioneer lets us draw cards. You'll see in our mana curve we have a lot of cheap spells, as we've just mentioned, that will let us draw more cards. And effectively the Miracle second element, outside of the card draw, is you're drawing all of these cards to set up your killer combo so that you can win the game. That's pretty much Miracle in 2. The first bit of Miracle is lots and lots of card draw, generally driven by cheap spells, generally with the Gadgets and Auctioneer. The second part is using all of that to set up a winning combo that will just smack your opponent without reply. So you can play a Miracle deck and it doesn't have to be a rogue. You can see Miracle Druids. I've seen Miracle Shamans, and Miracle does focus around the Gadgets and Auctioneer as far as my understanding goes. So they are the 2 things for a core Miracle deck. 1, drawing loads of cards with cheap spells or getting a lot of card cycle through. 2, using all of that card cycle to set up a winning combo that wins you the game. Now, that is the core of Miracle. So let's take a look now at Miracle Rogue. Why does Rogue work? Why did we see so many Miracle Rogues? I'm no master of this deck. I've been playing a little bit. I'd love to get a lot better at it, so do bear in mind there will be a lot of pros who can show you lots of different bits of this deck as well. So let's go through this version. I will link this in the chat afterwards. I will link this in the YouTube description of the video afterwards. I believe it's Kolento's version. That's Kolento, a very good player who is very worth taking a look at. Some interesting decks that he's got out there. Okay, so we've got our Miracle concept all nailed down. We want to get out of Gadgets and Auctioneer. We want to throw out lots and lots of cheap spells, and then we want to set up a combo or a winning card. So this is the core of our Miracle deck. Our deck at the moment, aside, take out the Rogue bit for the moment, we want to play lots of cheap spells. We want to get down a Gadgets and Auctioneer and play a lot of cheap spells on top of him, and then we want to set up Leroy Jenkins. Now, why Leroy Jenkins will go through and why Rogue, those 2 are quite tightly sort of, tied together. The Rogue has a lot of good supporting cards for Leroy, and that's what we'll go through. Let's first things first take a look at our mana curve. You can see that in the 0, 1, 2, 3 we have the vast majority of our deck is 0 to 3 mana. We've got a lot of cheap spells, a lot of cheap abilities there. So we're going to be playing a lot of stuff early in the game probably with this deck. And why? That will become clear very, very soon. So let's take a look. Firstly, if you look through our deck list, just take a look there. How many minions do you actually see, guys? Ladies and gentlemen, you see no minions, no minions, no minions, no minions, no minions. Blood Mage Thalnos. No minions. Earthen Ring Farseer. Edwin Vancleef. 2 SI7 MI5 agents. Leroy. And 2 Gadgets and Auctioneer. So, in actual fact, if we do a quick tot up, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a mere 7, 8 with 2 Azure Drakes, 9, 10. So we've got 10 out of 30 minions. That sounds pretty good. But then let's look at our Miracle curve. You can see with our Miracle mana curve here, if we just take a look around there, my first minion, I've got a 2 minion, a 3. None of these are particularly strong in attack, notice. I've got a couple of SI7s. Okay, they're solid, but they're not the biggest attacking minions either. I've got Leroy. Okay, we know he's our finisher. A couple of Azure Drakes, and then the Gadgets and Auctioneer. And then suddenly after 5 mana, no 6, no 7. So we've already established that our mana curve and how we play this deck, we're going to be doing a lot of stuff early on, or because the Gadgets and Auctioneer is 5 mana, we might actually be having to save a lot of cards as well, and we'll explain that as we go through the list. So because we do not have strong attacking minions in the early game, when you look at a deck list, when you're trying to deck list or imitate or learn another deck, have a think about where the minions are, where the spells are, and what you are trying to do. So we're trying to set up Leroy. We're trying to get the Gadgets and Auctioneer and play a lot of cheap spells. Because all of our minions are in the late game, what does that mean? It means we are vulnerable in the early game. And because we are vulnerable in that early game, it means that we obviously need to keep ourselves alive in that early game, and that to a degree is what all of the spells we've got are for. So we've now looked at our minions, we know that a lot of them are dropping in the late game, and we know that we need to set up Leroy or similar. So really, when we look at our mana curve, we can see that from 0 to 3 mana we are using a lot of stuff in that early game to keep ourselves alive, and this is where Miracle Rogue requires a lot of subtlety of play. And I'll be honest with you, it's quite a tough deck to play, from what I've seen, and I'm by no means a master of this, but the true concept of this Miracle Rogue is to stay alive in the early game, get out the Gadgets and Auctioneer in the mid game, draw a load of cards, set up Leroy, still be alive, and then finish in the mid to late game. This is not a rush deck by any means. You're not going to be rushing in and winning early with a Miracle Rogue. You just need to keep the situation under control until you've got things set up, and you can do so well. So let's take a look. We've got our concept of the deck. We've took a look at the deck list. We've took a look at our mana curve. We've took a look at our minions. Let's understand as we go through that mana curve. We'll go through the cards and see what they do. Always part of our New Player Monday, knowing your enemy. So first up, we've got Backstab, a very, very solid card in terms of the roguishness. We'll grab a Backstab, 2 damage to an undamaged minion. 2 things there. One, that will let us remove cheap minions. It will let us try and control against rushes. Secondly, that is 0 mana. So if I've played a Gadgets and Auctioneer, I can suddenly remove a minion, and you know what? Not only do I draw another card, but I've not spent any mana doing so. Fantastic. And part of Miracle Rogue is the subtlety of it, is knowing when to save your cheap spells and when to spend your cheap spells. Should I spend a cheap spell on removing a minion in the early game, or should I save it so that I can draw cards with the Gadgets and Auctioneer in the late game? That is the delicate balance of this deck. But Backstab, a very strong control card, a key bit of the Rogue's arsenal. Preparation, next up. The next spell you cast this turn costs 3 less. Well, that's fairly self-explanatory. You're going to be using Preparation to play more spells in the mid to late game, and you're going to be using that to combo off the Gadgets and Auctioneer. So let's say on turn 5 I played my Gadgets and Auctioneer, so I've got 5 mana, I played my Gadgets and Auctioneer, I have 0 mana. What happens if I play a Preparation? Well, not only do I draw 1 card and set myself up, but then I can play another spell for nothing. So I might Preparation into a more expensive spell like a Fan of Knives. I might Preparation into perhaps a Sap or a Shiv or an Eviscerate, any of these kind of things that I might set up. I might Blade Flurry, or I might go for a Conceal, and that Conceal is a real key card that we'll come on to in a second. But Preparation, you can see, not only for the free mana does it trigger a card draw, or I can play it if I'm in a bind, but then I can use it to tee up yet another card, so I can draw another card. So this starts a combo with Gadgets and Auctioneer on the table where you can draw a lot of cards and play a lot of cards too. Shadow Step. So why are we using Leroy Jenkins? The answer is in Shadow Step, along with other things. Returning a friendly minion to your hand, it costs 2 less. So if I drop Leroy, I charge in for 6 damage, I can Shadow Step, and then suddenly I can play Leroy again for 2 mana rather than 4. So, if I had 10 mana, let's say it's at the end of the game, and I have Leroy and 2 Shadow Step, I can drop Leroy, 6 damage, Shadow Step for nothing, Leroy for 2 mana, another 6 damage, Shadow Step for nothing, and then Leroy again for another 2 mana. I've spent 10 mana, I've dropped 3 Leroy Jenkins, and that is 18 damage rather than 6. That is a basic example of a combo in the late game. If I've set myself up, 2 Shadow Steps, 1 Leroy Jenkins, hopefully no tanks or anything on the table to stop me, that is where I suddenly do 18 damage. And you know what? If I've been chipping away with damage throughout the game, that 18 damage could be an execute. It could be a lethal. It could be a finishing the game right there. That is Miracle in a nutshell. Leroy! I love your enthusiasm, Bunny in the chat, and Leroy indeed. That is absolutely awesome. You're going to have to forgive me for a little mash of the keyboard there. So that is our Leroy combo with Shadow Step. Shadow Step, do not forget, you're going to be wanting to try and stave Shadow Step for Leroy, but there are other situations that you'd use it in. Say, for example, I'm really desperate, I might need to Shadow Step an Azure Drake to draw a card. I might need to Shadow Step a Gadgets and Auctioneer so it doesn't get killed. Playing your Gadgets and Auctioneer in a safe situation is also another subtlety of this deck as well. So we're not going to be able to cover all of the subtleties of this deck in a Hearthstone half hour, but what we will try and do is rattle through it and then get it out there so that you guys can have a look and see exactly how it plays. Next up, we've got Cold Blood. So if we take a quick look at Cold Blood, then Cold Blood will give a minion 2 attack, or if we combo it, it'll give 4 instead. So for giving a minion 2 or then giving a minion 4, you can see that if we play that after another card, then obviously that triggers combo. This is another way of setting up Leroy. It's another way of setting up minions to carry out executes. If we have Cold Bloods in hand, if I play a Leroy and then play a Cold Blood on him, then suddenly he has 10 rather than 6. So then if we combo Cold Blood and Shadow Step, I drop a Leroy Jenkins for 4 mana, I Cold Blood for 5 mana, I then attack for 10 damage, I then Shadow Step and then attack for another 6, dropping the Leroy Jenkins again. That is another combo. So I'm not going to go through every single combo again, but you can see Cold Blood helps Leroy. That's what he does. Conceal, giving your minion stealth to the next turn. You always use this to protect stuff in a bind, and you'll generally always use that on Gadgets and Auctioneer. I might rattle off a bunch of cards, draw a bunch of cards, or if I don't think I need to wait for more mana to play more spells, I conceal to protect my Gadgets and Auctioneer. So that is how we set him up. Next up we have Deadly Poison. Deadly Poison gives weapon to attack. You combo Deadly Poison with your weapon, which we'll run through in a little bit, the Assassin's Blade and similar. But you use this to help you with AoE clearance with Blade Flurry and similar. But that will let you pick off minions if you need to with your summoned rogue weapon. It will let you set up for a big damage combo with some of your other cards. So Deadly Poison, an important one. Generally use it to combo for clearance, if anything else. But here is what it goes so well with. Blade Flurry. Blade Flurry destroys your weapon and does its attack damage to all enemies. So if I have a 1-1 rogue, if I have a 1-2 rogue weapon, I Deadly Poison to make it 3. I can Blade Flurry for 3 to all of the enemies. That might wipe the board when it comes to me being rushed by Hunter, Shaman Totems, removing tanks and similar. Or if I actually have my Assassin's Blade down, suddenly if I've got a Deadly Poison on that and 6 damage, and I do a Blade Flurry for 6 damage to all enemies, that is serious damage across the table. So Blade Flurry, a combo card that you will use generally with Deadly Poison, hopefully with an Assassin's Blade or your summoned rogue weapon. That will help you clear the board. That is what Blade Flurry is for. You've only got one, as Pepe would say in Star Fox, use bombs wisely. You need to use Blade Flurry wisely. Eviscerate, if I can spell it first time up, I'm going to be very, very happy. Eviscerate, 2 damage, combo does 4 damage. Because it's 2 mana, not all of the time are you going to be throwing this out there later in the game. You may not get the combo effect of this sometimes, and that is okay, but it is powerful table control. You'll be throwing these spells down so that you can keep yourself alive in the early game. As much as you want to save the free damage spells or the low damage spells to go with your Gadgets and Auctioneer, you also need to make sure you're alive and that you don't have big tanks in your way and similar. If Leroy can't attack because there's a tank in the way, Leroy is useless. So keep the table under control. Eviscerate is for such a situation. And you can also Shadow Step and Preparation into that as well. That will be very, very handy too. So Eviscerate, keep things under control. And you'll see a theme in all of these early spells. That is exactly what they do. Let's tee up again with Sap. Sap, returning an enemy minion to your opponent's hand. If that slows your opponent down by 1 turn, if it forces them to replay a mana curve, this is a tempo card. It is control. It's softer control because the opponent can just go and play that minion again. But if I can return an Ancient of War, a huge tank of some description to my opponent's hand, that may just set me up to Leroy and win. So Sap is control. Shiv gives you card draw, lets you do 1 damage, can combo with your spell damage that you have. You've got Blood Mage in there as well for that reason, as well as the Azure Drake. That could be 1 to 2 damage and drawing a card, but the card draw is equally key, so Shiv is another combo-y card. The Blood Mage himself, Blood Mage Thanos, fulfills a couple of deals in this deck. The spell damage combos well. You've obviously seen that we've got other spells, Eviscerate, Shiv, all of these other kind of things. Blood Mage will buff those up as well if you're going to Blade Flurry off a Deadly Poison weapon and similar. The Death Rattle of drawing a card lets you draw a card. This is a card game, card drawing is good. A pretty self-explanatory card in there, but also good because he's low mana and will help you in the early game. Fan of Knives. The Fanning of Knives, 1 damage to all enemy minions and drawing a card. Again, combo him with Blood Mage, combo him with the Azure Drake for additional spell damage. Suddenly you've got 2 damage to all minions, and again you're drawing a card. So that helps you with clearance against things that AoE. The Earthen Ring Farseer. You will take damage on your hero using the Rogue and Valera Sanguinar and the... I can't spell Earthen. There we go. Using Valera Sanguinar, using weapons, swinging away at minions, swinging away at your enemy hero. Don't forget that as you're keeping the table under control in the early game with Miracle Rogue, you need to be chipping away for damage. If you get that little bit, if you get 5 damage, 4 damage, on your opponent's hero in the early game while they can't strike back, then that can be the difference between winning and not. You might find that your combo goes off and you're 2 damage short. That can be literally the wafer thin margin, wafer thin Monty Python style between you winning and you losing. So continually chipping away at your opponent's hero is important. The Earthling Ring Fast here lets you restore 3 health, and it's a 3/3/3 solid minion. Again, could be a difference between life and death, that 3 health, because you're going to be using your hero. Welcome to you guys in the stream. Good to have some new people here too. We're halfway through our little review of the Miracle Rogue. So next up we have Edwin Vancleef. Now Edwin Vancleef has got oh so many uses. You can see how he fits in with the rogue deck straight up with that combo ability. Gaining 2/2 for each card played earlier this turn. We've got oh so many cheap cards we can play. Vancleef, resist the temptation to play all of your cheap spells on Vancleef. He can become beastly and really scary in the early game. If you throw out a bunch of cheap spells, suddenly you can have a 2/2, 4/4, 6/6, 8/8 Vancleef, and you can have him turn 2 or turn 3. You can put pressure on your opponent early game. He's not always a late game card. He's not going to be always an early game card. Just remember, you need to try and save some of your spells to draw more cards with the Gadgetan Auctioneer. But where does Vancleef come in useful? If you're struggling for spells, if you don't have an Auctioneer in your hand in the early game, if you need to put some pressure on your opponent, then Vancleef, you can quickly power him up with a couple of cheap cards, and your opponent has to start using removal, has to find ways to get rid of him, otherwise he can swing for quite a lot of damage in the early game. So he's not a pinch hitter baseball wise, but he's certainly a pressure card that you can use. You just need to be careful when you use him. Don't try and power him up all the way, because he can easily get removed. But if you power him up just a little bit to 2/2, maybe 4/4, 6/6, he can do some good stuff for you. And here's one that you'll see in other versions of Miracle Rogue will get removed from decks. So let us grab the SI7. The SI7 is just oh so good because of the 2 damage combo. You'll throw him down after you played something else. That 2 damage can damage heroes, it can remove cards. 3/3 will make sure that he probably trades with something else. You fire off so many cheap spells in this deck that having things that combo is great. Leroy is our finisher. We can buff him up with Cold Blood. We can play him multiple times with Shadow Step. He is our go-to guy. Here's our win condition that we want to get out. Enough said. The Assassin's Blade. Now, Assassin's Blade is good against aggro. It is not so good against other things, because 3 and 4 will let us drop this as a rogue and start swinging away. If we need to, we can swing away against individual cheap minions. If we can combo it up with a Blade Furrow and Cold Blood, we're suddenly doing huge damage across the board. So the Assassin's Blade, good against aggro, maybe not so good against big hitting decks. Things with huge minions, I don't really want to be doing 3 damage and taking 8 against a giant, for example. But Assassin's Creed is Assassin's Creed. That's another misname. Assassin's Creed. That's another for the FailCraft dictionary of fails. Assassin's Blade is for the aggro. Go along with all of the other missaid things I've said through talking too quickly. Azure Drake, spell damage 1. We've got loads of spells. That works good. Reasons we previously discussed. Battlecry of drawing a card, throwing that down and drawing a card. 4/4, that will let us trade against minions and do similar. So a really solid 2 play there. Last but not least, the Gadgetan Auctioneer that we've said, this sort of cornerstone of the deck, the cornerstone of Miracle. It lets us work those miracles by just throwing them out there and drawing cards. So let us show you now. We've gone through part 1. We always, in these kind of episodes, go through the deck. We try and talk through the concept of the deck and how it works, go through a bit about how we try and play it, go through card by card, and just give a real top-line summary of how you can analyse a deck list, take the decks, and do similar. So next up, we will jump into, as we always try and do, casual games. We'll grab our mirror clear and see what's going on. Having done the theory crafting, we will jump into a game and see how this plays out in a real life example. There's pizza waiting and you guys want to see some games, so it's brilliant to see 5 of you there. While we churn through and see things, for those of you guys who've tuned in, we try and go out 4 or 5 nights a week. We've just come back from a week off. Please do subscribe, check out our YouTube and similar. We'll wrap that up at the end, but it is good to see you. So let us see the Miracle deck and Miracle Road in action. And do remember, I'm no master. When you're mulliganing, it all depends on who you're playing against. I'm playing against a Warlock. He might be quite... it could be quite aggressive. He could be a handlock in terms of throwing out late minions. We just don't know. So what I'd probably do against a Warlock, I'm no master of this deck, but I'd like to have control. I do not have control. I don't need a conceal. The Shadow Step is no good to me at the moment. The Deadly Poison could help me with controlling, so I'm going to keep that just in case I need to Deadly Poison my 2/2 summoned weapon. A Blood Mage, a Gadget Zan. Okay, so I've got my draw conditions in play now. The Blood Mage will let me do some stuff. Blade Flurry, good. Okay, I've managed to get Deadly Poison and Blade Flurry. If I summon a weapon, that will let me take a weapon from 1 attack to 3. I can then Blade Flurry and remove lots of cheap minions. So, knock on the table. Let's see what our opponent is coming up with. Nothing turn 1. Interesting. Preparation, I'm going to save that. I'm just going to throw down the Blood Mage for the time being. I don't know what he's playing still, so I'm not going to summon a weapon yet. If he decides to knock out my Blood Mage, I get that additional card draw, which of course is useful. You can see I'm struggling on cards a little bit here. I did manage to get my Gadgets and Auctioneer, but I still do not know what my opponent is playing. Is he playing an aggressive early game Warlock, or is he playing a more handlock style late game big minion Warlock? We will find out soon. Life tap. He's life tapping, so again I've got another turn to get going. This is good for me. I want to be making sure of backstab. Powered up backstab is good. I'm not going to be preparationing into anything. There's no real spells I want to preparation into. So this is that point in time where, because I don't know what my opponent's doing, remember what I mentioned earlier about that chip damage. You can see that I can just chip away. He's had to damage himself, of course, because he's life tapping. The more damage I can get on him in the early game, the more it can help me. Drain life, deal 2, restore 2. Okay, a solid Warlock play. Now, already, we've gone through previous Hearthstone half hours on our YouTube channel, and in those we've discussed how can you tell what your opponent is playing? What kind of tells can you see? We're on turn 4, and I've not seen him play any cards on the table. That indicates to me he is probably not rushing. You know, stating the obvious, but there you go. I cannot set up my Gadget Zan just yet, but I've got lots of cheap cards. I'm feeling good. I've got control options. I'm also feeling good. I don't really want to waste my SI7 agent at this point in time because I can't do a double on him. I could drop him down to put some more pressure on. What I'm just going to do is attack and weapon up. So I can now start drawing my miracle combination next turn. If my Warlock opponent cannot start playing cards, I'm assuming that because he's not played anything in the early game, he's playing a later game combo. Okay, the Sentient Shieldmaster. I'm going to need to get rid of that anyway. So I need to start looking at a bit of comboing. So what can I do? I can throw down the Gadget Zan. I can then backstab to draw a card. I can then not Shiv for 1 and draw a card. The chances are my Gadget Zan Auctioneer would get killed, probably. He would probably go all out to try and remove that. I'm not going to get the most of it if I play it this turn, so I'm going to look for other combinations. I'm going to firstly Shiv. Cold Blood, good, that's going to help me a lot. And then I'm going to go into the SI7 agent now. That will let me do 2 damage. I'm just whittling away at this minion here. Now, annoyingly, I can't quite pick him off, but I'm saving my Gadget Zan Auctioneer, even though I could have played it. Because I want to get the most out of it possible. I'm looking for a conceal. If I can remove minion threats from the table, that would also be useful. Or, last but not least, I want to make sure that I've got a lot of free or cheap cards that I can make the most of it with. So, I've still not seen a big tell as to how my opponent is going to be playing either. Let's wait and see. So, while we wait for our opponent to play, what are the subtleties of this deck? Well, as we've mentioned, should I play control spells in the early game or should I save them to go with the Gadget Zan Auctioneer? How aggressive am I in terms of attacking the enemy hero? Do I try and keep the table? Oh, interesting. Okay, we've healed up with an Earthen Ring Farseer, a life tap, a nice combo to take some damage. At least I can remove this off the table this turn. He's gone for a straight up trade. And I get Shiv. Okay, I'm feeling a little bit more confident that I can probably drop an Auctioneer without getting into too much trouble. So let's show you the basics of this combo in action. There goes the Gadget Zan Auctioneer. Backstab for 0 will let me do 2 damage. Lets me draw. Second Shadow Step has been drawn. Lovely. What can I do now? I do have just the 1 mana left. Deadly Poison. I'm not going to weapon up my weapon. I'm not going to be Shadow Stepping or anything like that. I'm going to take the risk, and I'm just going to use my Hero Note to keep that minion under control. He may well have a control option that will take 4. He could have Soulfire or something like that. So this could be very, very risky. I still have played my Gadgets and Auctioneer in a situation where I may not actually have it alive for long enough to get my full combo in play. But you can see at the moment I've got a Cold Blood. I have 2 Shadow Steps. If I pull Leroy, then I've got a big damaging combo, and alongside 4 damage from the Gadgets and Auctioneer, that could be game. So while we wait for our Warlock to make his move, let's survey what I've managed to get in place. Ooh, if this turns into a tank, that could cause me problems. It hasn't, unless he's got a Sun Fury. He does, and that is a very strong play by our Warlock. We can tell he's playing a handlock now, as if we couldn't tell before. And he now has 2 solid tanks. So this is where the second of my combos can come into play. I can Deadly Poison for 3. I can then Blade Flurry to deal damage to all enemies. That will take out 2 of his minions and severely wound 1. And then I can possibly attack to remove the last. I still do not have a Leroy, so what I need to do now is get my opponent's side of the table under control. So this really nicely, I'm really glad that this has happened, illustrates one of the combos we can do. First up, Deadly Poison. 3 on my weapon. Note that lets me draw. Oh, even better, I can then drop an SI7 agent. Let's just be careful that I do this correctly mana-wise. So the SI7 will let me deal 2 damage, you can see, because of the combo, and it doesn't let me draw a card because it wasn't a spell, of course. But then thirdly, I can Blade Flurry. And watch the Blade Flurry suddenly let me draw a card and deal weapon damage to all enemies. You can see I've now reset the table. Really good stuff. With 1 mana left, there's no real need for me to Shadow Step anything at this point in time. I can just attack with my Gadgets and Auctioneer. I need Leroy Jenkins. That is the main thing. So I'm going to need to finish up after this game, I'm afraid, because I do have food waiting. But what I'll probably do is, depending on how the evening goes, I may be back on later in the evening. We always stream on afterwards in the evening, and we jump off microphone, but we continue playing the decks we played and keep learning. So if this is your first episode of the Hearthstone Half Hour, if you join us live on twitch.tv/FailCraft Cast, we always stream into the evening. I need Leroy. We've got a solid tank there, and look at the draw we've just got. That is an excellent illustrating example of exactly what we were looking for, a sap. I've got some options here. I can Edwin Vancleef, I can Azure Drake, which will really put some more pressure on this Sunwalker. I don't want to be throwing a bunch of stuff out that I can't really do much with. Options, I can Vancleef, and that will put some severe pressure down. I'm not going to Azure Drake because I don't need the spell damage just yet. Sorry, I'm not going to Drake for the spell damage. I can get rid of Shiv. I need to kind of keep these other cards in my hands. Preparation will let me start comboing some more stuff. And so let's prep. I can prep into a sap. That means he's certainly not going to be able to attack me this go. Oh, and I've drawn Leroy, guys. Fantastic. So let's see what we can do with this combo. So we've got, can we win the game in one go? And that would be the oh so good. So we can Leroy. I'm going to have to leave it 1 turn, but I just really want to set myself up well. This is where I've talked too long. Pressure, pressure, pressure. Right, firstly, let's get the damage in play. I'm going to Azure. I'm going to Edwin. Right, I wasn't fully intending on doing that, but I've actually set up a really nice win condition. I would love to just had someone from the stream welcome one of the guys on Twitter, Ahanu. It's great to have you with us as well. I would also love to test this out against a pirate deck or play some fun games, but I need to go and get some food. My wiser half has got me some dinner together, and you never leave a lady waiting when she has made you some dinner. So there, I was thinking about how I could set up Leroy, but in actual fact you can see that I've dropped Edwin at a reasonable time in the game. I've set everything up really, really powerfully. He's going to have to get some big tanks out if I'm not just going to take this game straight up. So it's a nice example, this, of how Miracle can work quite well. Okay, while we're waiting, let us see what combos we've got in hand with Leroy. That will finish up this episode nicely. Leroy I can drop. I have 2 Shadow Steps, so that lets me at minimum do 18 damage. You can see that I do have Cold Blood as well. That brings me up to 22 damage. A stonking 22 damage. So unless he can drop a tank, which he's not. He's removed the Gadget Zone Auctioneer, but by now it is too late. So let's watch this combo in action. Leroy Jenkins, with best battle cries please. We are going to Cold Blood. Cold Blood lets me do 10. I will 10 for him. I will then Shadow Step to return him to my hand. You can see that he's now going to cost 2. I can drop Leroy again, and I can throw him down again, and that wins me the game. So that is the miracle element with Leroy. You can see the Cold Blood, you can see the Shadow Steps. You saw a bit of the Gadget Zone Auctioneer working well. It was nice to see all of that coming together. Do remember, of course, we're playing in casual mode. We will be playing against either brand new players. Sometimes we'll be playing against very experienced players testing out decks. So is that a reflection of how it would go in a ladder game against a handlock? Maybe not, but it is a nice example just of how we can run through a little bit of Miracle Rogue. So that is a nice example, rounding up of, we first went over the Miracle concept, how it revolves around Gadget Zone Auctioneer and making the draws with cheap spells, and then triggering a combo so that you can use a big finishing play of some description. So our big finishing play was Leroy. We then went through a deck list of a Miracle Rogue. I believe it was Kalento's Miracle Rogue, and we took a good look at that and saw how it all worked, tried to pull all of the cards together, and took a look and saw how we could maybe see all of them working. And last but not least, we took them into a casual game. We knew our enemy, we took a look at how the deck worked, we broke it down, and then we played it to see how it could work. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's really good to see you guys. As I said, been away for a week. We're going to be at E3 in June, so have a look on the blog for that. But last but not least, what we'd ask you for, even if you never tune in again, if you could go on YouTube and comment, drop us a tweet, comment on the stream. It would be great, just so we can know what you liked, what you didn't like, and how we can do better content for you in the future. A quick sign off of where you can find us. We are live on Twitch, twitch.tv/FailCraft Cast, Monday to Friday. It's generally 7:30 to 8 PM GMT UK London time. But if you sign up on Twitch, if you hit subscribe, a Twitch account is free and you will get an email whenever we go live. Everything that we've archived is on youtube.com/FailCraft Casts. You can find New Player Mondays, where we do deck guides like this, Arena Tuesdays, where you can pick the arena deck that we play, Ladder Wednesdays, where we show you how we get on the ladder, Thursdays, where we go through tactics, and Fridays, where we play an entirely different game or something fun. That is the YouTube. Failcraft.org is the website, lots of stuff there, go check it out. And last but not least, twitter.com/FailCraft Casts. If we're not streaming in the evening, whatever time of day it is, you'll find us on there. So it is dinner time. May well be back later. I will tweet if we are. So all of you guys live, thank you for tuning in. Might see you later in the evening. If you're watching this on YouTube, brilliant to have you along. Do, whether you liked it or loathed it, please just comment and let me know what was good and what was bad and what I can do better. Thank you very much for tuning in to tonight's Hearthstone Half.